This PowerPoint is one that I developed for, kind of generics in terms of how to do a great personal statement, but I'm going to have what I say to you also be very focused toward PM&R, because this is, of course, the AOC PMR that's hosting this. And so I'm assuming that folks are at least somewhat maybe interested in PM&R as a potential specialty choice. But whether you are or not, I'm hoping this will be helpful to you. All right, let me see if I can. It looks like maybe I've got an icon here that maybe I can advance. Here we go. All right. I don't know if Madeline, you did that or I did that, but someone did that. So we're going to look at what personal statements are designed to do for you, not only in general, regardless of specialty specific considerations, but also with a heavy dose of PM&R considerations as well. We'll talk about what you should have in a really good personal statement, and just as importantly, what you should not have. How to make your personal statement unique to you and showcase you and your skills and abilities to make you look as good as possible to the persons who are reading it, and to give you some idea about should you have more than one version of your personal statement for some reason. And then we'll talk about when to get started on your personal statement and what kind of resources you can use to get it going. Okay, I don't have an icon to advance now. So a personal statement is basically a part of your residency application. And if you end up doing a fellowship, it'll be part of that as well. It is as important in your package of things that you turn in to the electronic residency application service as any other document. So it is as important as anything else in there, and in some cases more important than some of those. Research tells us, looking at data from program directors, and this is PMR specific and more generic, that it is considered of equal importance to your licensing exam scores, any kind of letters of reference that you might have, particularly that are in the specialty that you're trying to get into, and to the MSPE, which is essentially your dean's letter. It also is a document, as I said before, that kind of looks at, helps readers figure out not only are you suitable for the specialty that you're trying to apply for, but are you a good candidate for their specific program as well? Because you could be a great candidate for a particular specialty, but not necessarily an ideal candidate for particular residency programs who might have variations in their mission and vision for what kind of physician they want to produce. And it should kind of showcase what skills and abilities you have personally and professionally that are going to help the person who's reading the personal statement predict your success, not only in residency, but afterwards. Because residency program directors are very concerned with not only how well you're going to do in residency, academically, clinically, personally, professionally, but they're also concerned with how well you're going to do after you leave residency, because what you do and how well you do it, no matter where you do it, reflects on not only the specialty, but it absolutely reflects on that residency program. And every program director wants their program to have a really good reputation, because that's what gets you really good applicants. Okay. So it also is very highly valued by program directors. The most recent survey of program directors that's been done says that about 78% of them say it's very important in terms of deciding who they're going to interview. Now, I'm going to a program directors meeting within the next month, and I'll be able to update that data for you, PM&R specific, but you can see that it's very, very important. Now, can it make the difference between whether or not you get an interview? Absolutely. Can it make a difference between, once you get an interview, whether or not you are ranked or ranked highly? Maybe. Okay. It's more likely, if it isn't done well, that it will keep you from getting an interview or would keep you from being ranked. But if the competition is really tight and there are other candidates they're trying to decide among in terms of who to offer an interview to or who to rank and how high to rank them, a really well-crafted personal statement can in fact put you over the edge. Okay, since the pandemic, personal statements have gotten a lot of additional weight. You want to be very careful when you're getting input from Student Doctor Network and other kinds of sources, because some of the data in those sources is pre-pandemic. Some of it's personal opinion that, however well meant, may not be accurate. But it's important to realize that personal statements have always been important, but of varying importance across different specialties. But since the pandemic, they are way more important among all specialties. And I'll tell you, they are incredibly important in PM&R for some very PM&R specific reasons that I'll talk about a little bit later, okay? So what the personal statement is it's a brief kind of essay that you're going to write. Now, when you turn this in, you need to know that the electronic residency application service allows you only about 3,500 characters, including spaces. Now, what does that translate into? Probably about 1.5 pages to 2 maximum, single space with double space between paragraphs, okay? And it basically tells a little bit about you, why you're seeking the specialty you are, what kind of program you're looking for, and what can you bring to a program to leave a positive mark on it. And it's incredibly important because it's your main opportunity to make a qualitative, not quantitative, but a qualitative case for yourself. Your grades and your board scores and your references and lots of other stuff that you will have submitted as other parts of your residency application are more quantitative. This is qualitative. This is you talking about you. You are talking about the person you know the most about. So it's important that when you do that, you articulate that really, really well so that whoever's reading it gets an idea of the fact that you've done your homework, you know enough about the specialty to know kind of what you're getting into. You know about the skills and abilities and attributes that are highly valued by that specialty. You have figured out what kind of program you think you might best thrive in. And so you are applying to programs that fit that definition. And it's highly important that when you describe what that is in your personal statement, that you make sure that you're sending the application to a program that fits that profile. And it also gives them insight into if they interview you and subsequently rank you high enough that you're going to match with them. Are you just going to be a resident who comes there and completes the education, or are you actually going to be able to contribute to the program? They want people who are going to be successful in completing the program for sure, but they want people who are absolutely going to leave their mark in a positive way on the program in some kind of way. So they're looking for that as well. The other thing to remember about who's reading the statement is that the program director will read it, the associate or assistant program director, if there is one, will read it, the residency program coordinator will probably read it, and then after that, there's variation in terms of who reads it at programs. Sometimes attending faculty will read them. Sometimes administrative assistants or people who are really good at just editing and evaluating people's ability to communicate in writing will read it. Sometimes they'll have people that the applicant, if they come there, would be working with will read it. Sometimes that's nurses, sometimes that's therapists, various and sundry things. So it's important to remember that your statement is being directed to and will be read by not just the program director, but by lots of other people, no less than 4 or 5 other people, and as many as 10 or more in some programs. some of whom will be clinicians and some of whom will not be. So it's important that when you write the personal statement, and this is especially true for PM&R, that you write it in such a way that you're writing it to the PM&R team, basically, at the places that you're applying for, okay? And you want them, when they finish reading your statement, to want to know more about you. And so that they can invite you for an interview where they can ask you more things about you and get a better feel for your potential compatibility with their program. So you want to leave them just a little curious and impressed at the beginning. Okay, next. So it is something that program directors use to weed out people. If you write a statement that shows that you really don't know a lot about the specialty, or you're trying to get into the specialty for the wrong reason, I'll give you an example of that. If you say, I want to be a PM&R doc because I want to specialize in sports medicine, you're done. It's over. Because that's not why program directors in PM&R or any other specialty want people in their residency program. And I'll tell you why. You know, most subspecialists, people like sports medicine specialists or cardiology, well, cardiology is not a good example, but things like, you know, spine surgeons or dermatopathologists or, you know, neonatologists who are pediatricians, those kind of things. They have had to do a foundational residency in a specialty that they really, really wanted to do. And that gives them the basis for later deciding to be and then train to be a subspecialist if they make that choice. Most subspecialists, with the exception of the internal medicine subspecialists, don't do their subspecialty full time. Some do, but most do not. And so that means that the person who's doing the subspecialty is going to be doing their primary basic specialty also. And so you want to get the specialty that's the best fit for you. And from there, if you choose to, then pick out a subspecialty or a fellowship program that's considered within the scope of practice of the primary specialty. No program director wants to hear in a personal statement about what you want to do after residency, except maybe one little paragraph about, or no, excuse me, one sentence that might say, you know, I've been thinking about maybe after residency, I might pursue X, Y, or Z or something like that. But they realize that you haven't made that decision yet because you couldn't have in a well-informed way. So if anybody has any questions about that, be sure and ask me. But it's really important that you indicate your desire to be in a residency and to be part of and become a specialist in whatever discipline it is, not subsequent to that, not having to do with what your subspecialty interest may be. And for another reason, you may think it's one thing and it may turn out to be something else. You know, you never know. And in fact, that is in fact what happened to me. I started residency with one idea about what I was going to be doing afterwards, and boy, did that ever change. So you never know. Next one. So what's unique about this statement as opposed to the other things that they have access to in ERIS? Okay, it doesn't focus on grades. In fact, you should not talk about your grades or your test scores. It has nothing to do with what other people think about you. Again, this is written by you, about you. It gives whoever's reading it a personal glimpse into you. And you should tell them things in this statement that they can't find anywhere else. They can't find out those things even in another part of your application packet. They should not be able to do that. And again, it gives them some insight into you and your character and what motivates you to, again, that's part of the process of figuring out, not only are you going to be a good fit for the specialty, but are you going to be a good fit for their specific program. And it is very future focused. You know, this is not about what you have done in the past. It's about what you want to do going forward in the next step of your career. And as I said before, it's going to be read by, a whole bunch of people. So you have absolute, total, utter control over what's in this document. It's a very powerful document. So you want to make sure that you exercise that control to your maximum benefit. Okay, next. So how do you get started? Well, you want to ask yourself 4 key questions. And my suggestion would be get you a pad of paper or just a blank screen on your computer, and write down these 4 questions, and then write down the answers, not in prose or anything, just bullet points that you can expand on. Okay, the first question is, what specialty are you interested in, and is that related to what interested you in medicine in the first place? And it may or may not be. Part of that first question is when you did decide on what specialty you want, in this case PM&R, I would hope. How did you make that decision? Was it an experience you had rotating with a PM&R doc? Was it a mentor that you had? Was it somebody who taught you? Was it somebody you're related to who's in your family? Was it the fact that you were the patient of someone in this specialty, or something else? And it almost doesn't matter what it is, but it needs to make sense. Okay, so that's question number 1. The second question is, what attributes or skills and abilities do you have that are valued by the specialty you're trying to get into? Now, what that does is it tells them that you've learned enough about the specialty that you can answer that question, and then you take that knowledge and you apply it to yourself. So an example might be, if you were applying to, say, psychiatry. If people have always found it really easy to come to you and ask you to listen to their problems and maybe offer them some advice or perspective, or maybe they just feel better after they've talked with you, that kind of thing, that might be a great skill, say, for a psychiatrist. Not that it wouldn't be a great skill for any physician, but it would be great for psychiatrists maybe. So for PM&R, I've read things on personal statements that say things like, they talk about, I have worked extensively with, say, the State Muscular Dystrophy Association. And so I've had a lot of experience dealing with folks with disabilities. And it doesn't have to be neuromuscular disabilities, it can be anything. And I've spent a lot of time with folks in, specify whatever the setting is. I really enjoy, dealing with that patient population from the standpoint of maybe, what their unique medical needs are, or realizing that their medical needs are pretty much very similar to the needs of anybody, but with some specific differences. It might be that. I've read that. I've read about the fact that, I had a family member, maybe a sibling or a parent or something, who had whatever happened, and they ended up being treated by a physiatrist, and they were impressed with, how physiatrists work in teams. And I have a lot of experience dealing as a team member and as a team leader, and then you identify what that is. That could be serving as functioning as an athlete in high school or undergrad or whatever. It could be working as a team with a job or some volunteer activity you did, or whatever it might happen to be. So that's the second main question. The third main question is, what kind of residency program are you looking for? It could be you want a program, you're very interested in living in an urban area, big urban area, because that's where you grew up and that's what you're used to, so on and so forth. That's fine, but you want to make sure that the programs that you're sending applications to are located in urban areas, and vice versa. You may say that you want to be in a large program with many or a comprehensive opportunities for subspecialty education and rotations and all that kind of stuff. You may want a program that's very highly structured. You may, on the other hand, favor a program where there is some degree of structure, but maybe everything is not quite so structured, and maybe there's some additional flexibility in the educational program, so on and so on and so forth. Okay. It's, I think, a good idea that if you have significant geographic preferences or preferences that come from obligations for family and friends and stuff like that, that's okay. But I would strongly suggest to you that since getting into residency in any specialty, and with specific emphasis on PM&R, is a very competitive process, and every program is going to have way more people applying than they will ever be able to take, all of whom are, or most of whom are very, very well qualified. You don't want to, I don't think it's wise to all of a sudden put yourself in a position where they don't think you're interested, no matter how good you look otherwise, because of, location or whatever. Now, if you decide you want to be in a program of a sufficient size that maybe you have a family member who has specific medical needs that can only be met in a specific type of community with specific resources, that's fine to say that, as long as that's not the only reason you say. You're looking for other things that are very program specific. And then the fourth thing is, what can you bring to a program? How is the program going to be a better place for your either having been there, or how are you going to positively influence it while you're there? And I'll give you an example of what I did, and it could be a bazillion different things. For example, if you're trying to get into a residency, say, and I'm just making this up as I go, say in San Antonio, Texas, if you happen to have Spanish skills, well, that's a huge advantage. And not only should that be on your CV, but you should say, I'm very familiar with the Hispanic culture. I think I could be very, very beneficial, not only as a translator, but could build rapport with patients and their families, and help contribute to their getting better process, whether it be on an outpatient or inpatient setting, because you have that insight that maybe not every single attending physician might have. So that would, and you can do that. When I applied for residency, I had a particular profile of programs that I was looking at, and one of the things that I mentioned was that I had lived outside the United States in multiple places, that I spoke a language other than English, and that I had lived in very different cultures, and that I had cultural awareness, and that I knew that in the communities where the residency programs I had applied to or was applying to were all communities that were culturally diverse. And so I said, I bring that with me. I can improve on that, but I think that I'll be able to be an asset. You won't have to worry about me being able to interact with someone from a very, very different culture, whether it be, pick the aspect of culture you want. So those are the four main questions. Why this specialty? What attributes do you have that are highly valued by this specialty? What are you looking for in a residency program, and what are you going to bring to a program? And when you're talking about what you value in a, what attracted you to the specialty, you don't want to say, and I've seen this so many times, you don't want to say, well, I want to be an excellent, well-rounded PM&R clinician that's been exposed to the breadth and depth of the specialty, so that after residency, I will be able to be a functional, capable, independent clinician no matter where I go. For God's sake, please don't say that, because every single residency program is looking and has a goal for that. Okay, they want every single person to have that. So that's not focused on you specifically. That's not unique to you. Okay, and also don't tell people what they already know. The other thing is, how did you select the specialty? You know, when you're talking about that, don't go into, well, you know, I picked this specialty because this specialty provides excellent training and yada yada yada, and it's a specialty that's in shortage, and talk about, you know, various and sundry aspects of the specialty and what's involved with them, whatever. That's stuff that the program director and other people who read your statement, they're going to know all of that. Again, they're not interested in you telling them what you know about their specialty. They're interested in you telling them about what they don't know about you, why you want to be in their specialty, what you're looking for in a program, what attributes you have that are suitable for the specialty, and why should they take you over someone else. Okay, next slide. So those 4 questions, write down, you know, just bullet point answers that you can turn into what will eventually be a prose answer. So in terms of looking at some of the things to consider when you're talking about how did you pick this specialty, think about, were they role models? And if so, what were those role models and why were they role models? You know, that kind of thing. What have been your most important extracurricular activities? You know, if you're a very service-minded person and you have an established track record in medical school or before, or both preferably, of service to others and doing extracurricular activities, that may be very important to a program where their program is known for that and their residents are all interested in that. So, and if that's the case, it almost doesn't matter what you've done. The very fact that you've done it means that you're going to fit in that residency program more likely than someone, you know, who has never done that or hasn't demonstrated an aptitude for that or an interest in that. So other things you might think of is, what have you done that you've been most proud of, those kind of things. And then that helps you, those other things that are on the previous slide, helps you kind of formulate those answers to the first couple of questions, you know, like why did you pick the specialty, or how did you pick the specialty, and what kind of skills and abilities do you have that might be good for this particular specialty. Okay, next one. So again, here are those 4 main things that I mentioned before. You really want to make sure you address those. Now, you don't need to necessarily address them in this order, although this order makes sense to me. You want to catch the reader's attention fairly quickly. So, you know, what you might not want to do, you might not want to start out with what you can bring to a program, because that's not their very first concern, to be honest. They're going to want to know some of those other things up front. So, you know, this order is a really good order, but you don't have to be, it's not written in stone. And you don't have to spend an equal amount of time in each one of those areas. Just say what you need to say, tell them what you want them to know about you, and move on. Okay. They're interested in an applicant who will be able to join them in their already well-established functioning educational program and their team, and you're going to be able to do that without being an administrative or clinical pain in the butt. That's it in a nutshell. They want you to be able to just integrate right in. Okay, next slide. So I mentioned this before. How did you come to select the specialty? You want to be specific. You want to be concise. Okay. What is it about the specialty that really excites you? What is it? Because they want to know what that is, and it'll be different for different people. So you want to have specific details that illustrate what you say. Okay. Next one. And then, as I said before, what kind of skills and abilities or talents do you have that will be that are valued by the specialty, that are an inherent part of the practice of the specialty? It doesn't have to be skills and abilities in the specialty in terms of it. You don't have to have experience in the PM&R realm. If it's a skill or ability you have that you've acquired somewhere else in some other setting, and it doesn't even have to be medical for that matter, that's valued in PM&R, then that's fine. Like, as I mentioned before, you know, being able to work on as a member of a team or a team leader is a critical skill. If you can't do that, you're not gonna, you may not even survive residency, period, in PM&R. So you gotta have the ability to do that. So you have to be able to provide an illustration of how you're able to do that. If you say you have that skill, then you better be able to back it up with an example. It could be that you were on an athletic team. It could be that you worked in a setting, clinical or otherwise, where there was teamwork involved. So just describe that briefly. You don't have to go into a lot of detail, but just, if you say I'm a very effective team member and team leader, and I know that that's important in PM&R practice, and you might want to say, just one way of how you know that, and then give us some examples of where you got that skill, how you got that skill, and how you've improved upon that skill. Okay, next one. Again, what are you looking for in a program? I've already mentioned that, but you want what you say in this section about what type of program you're looking for. You want that to match the profile of the places you're applying as closely as possible. This tells the people who are reading your statement that you've gone to the trouble to not only learn about the specialty, but you've gone to the trouble of doing some background homework and research on the programs you're applying to determine not only where might you survive, but just, or more importantly, where you're going to thrive, where you're going to be happy, where you're going to learn more than if you were in a place that you're just trying to survive it and get the hell out of there as soon as you can, whenever it's over with. That's not the idea. They want someone who's going to integrate into their specific milieu, their specific team, their specific program, who knows what their program's strengths are, who knows how it's organized, and who feels that that'll be a good fit for them. And then things external to the program may figure in, but the program itself and what you're looking for in a program is really of primary importance. When I did my personal statement for the University of Minnesota, I guarantee you I did not say I am really not looking forward to the Minnesota winters, because I've never lived in a godforsaken cold climate before for months and months. That would not have gone over well. I did mention that I had experience in Minnesota doing other things, and what that was, which addressed some of the other questions that I'm telling you about that need to be in a good personal statement. So they knew I was familiar with the place and the geography and the culture and all of that. And I didn't mention for the fact that my wife and I were both completely, utterly terrified about the winter. I mean, we were, but I didn't figure that was really a very important part of my personal statement. And later on, I found out that even people who applied from the upper Midwest, who were way more familiar with hardcore winter than I was, were also very concerned, maybe not to the degree that I was, about being as far north as we were going to be. How cold it was. But what I found out when I got there, after I'm there and I matched and everything, where I grew up, in the South, when it was really, really cold, heck, everything shut down. Nobody got anything done. And it was just a nightmare. Up there, they are much more equipped to deal with the winter, and nothing slows down, absolutely nothing. And so my fears were largely unfounded. You just learn to wear a different kind of winter coat than you've ever worn before. And, when you're there, you embrace the place. And when you're in Rome, do what the Romans do. I never thought that I would, before I went there, be going out to a parade at a big festival, kind of like Mardi Gras in New Orleans in January, when it's 10 below zero, and I'm out there with, 10,000 of my closest friends having a great time. I never even figured that would happen, but it did. And so anyway, so, you need to give this some thought, but you want people who read this to be convinced that, and you want to be genuine. You're not trying to deceive anybody. You want them to be convinced that you've done enough background thinking and research to determine that not only PM&R is a good pick for you, specialty wise, but that their program has significant potential for you as well, based upon what your skills and abilities and interests are. Okay. Next one. And then again, what can you bring, to a program? And I've already talked about that. So those are the things when you ask program directors in any specialty, but particularly in PM&R, if you ask them, tell me 4 things that you want to know about applicants, these are the 4 things they're going to tell you. Okay. All right, next one. So no matter what, you want to catch whoever's reading this document, you want to catch their attention early on in the first few sentences. Okay. You want it, some people, use quotes, by famous people or cliches and stereotypes. You want to be very careful about that. I'm not saying don't do it, but be very careful and make sure that the quotes particularly have an absolute connection to what your main message is going to be about yourself. Okay. Things you do not want in your personal statement are anything negative about anybody, any place, any region, any institution, anything like that. Don't say anything about politics, religion, lifestyle, money, or anything that's the least bit even possibly controversial, because again, you don't know who's reading this document. You don't, for example, if you're applying to a program that's located in say in a city that politically leans in a particular direction, okay, and you have to realize that even with that factual data, how they lean probably has nothing to do with how this educational program works, and it doesn't affect the education you're going to get and that they're providing. It doesn't affect the quality of patient care that's being provided. But you do need to be aware that you're going to run into people in that program and in that institution who have different experiences than you do, different cultural experiences, different geographical experiences. They absolutely have different views in terms of politics, religion, money, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very good idea not to discuss that. And I have found in my professional life, it's just a good idea not to discuss that with anybody anyway, unless you get to be such good friends with them. And this is not when you're applying for residency. You get to be such good friends with them that you feel like if you're completely honest with them, it's not going to change their opinion of you or your relationship. I don't discuss my politics or some of these sensitive things with my family or with people that I've known forever, unless I know, not think, but know it's not going to affect our relationship. And you don't want to do that in residency either. I went through an entire residency and nobody knew what my political leanings were. They had no clue. They had no clue what my thoughts about finances were. They had no clue about anything other than where I came from and what they knew I was interested in based upon my interactions, with them professionally and socially. So be very careful. If anything might be even halfway controversial, don't mention it. If there's any doubt in your mind, ask somebody who's experienced with reviewing personal statements, whether it be PM&R specific or not. You can always ask me and I'll be glad to tell you. And as I mentioned before, don't tell people what they already know about their specialty or about the medical profession or anything like that. Okay, next. Again, get their attention early. Why do you think you would be a great candidate for not only the specialty of PM&R, but their program, and tie those things together. You want your whole statement to show that you've learned things over time and that you have a realistic idea of what training in the specialty will be like and what practice in the specialty will be like. I mean, you don't have a real detailed knowledge, but you at least are not clueless. And that you want to show that you know enough about their program as you describe what kind of program you're looking for, that those two are similar, and that you give them a profile about your background and your skills to let them know that you'd be a good potential fit. Okay, next. Okay, when you're writing this, you want to make sure that you expect to do first, second, third, fourth revisions. You're not going to just sit down and do this and come up with a first draft and kablam, you're done. I've never met anybody who could do that. Maybe one day I will. You want to, so my saying that because you need to make sure you plan enough time to do the personal statement. I typically suggest that people should have their personal statement done, finalized, ready to turn in by mid to late summer between year 3 and year 4, so that you're ready to go and submit your entire ARIS package as soon as you can. And so then from that point, you know what your deadline is. My suggestion is to back up at least 3 to 5 months to give you time to do all the things you need to do to excuse me, be successful in medical school and put together this, excuse me, this package of stuff you need to send to ARIS, and one of which is this really, really important document. I would suggest that you have several people read it who you trust. I would suggest you have somebody with medical knowledge, somebody who knows you well, somebody who has little to no medical knowledge, someone who can be a very good editor, but mostly you want to have people that are objective. If you want to let, for example, parents or spouses or siblings or whatever read it, that's okay. But remember, they're not objective. They can't be, nor should they be. There may be a situation where if you have a family member or a very close friend who happens to be a physiatrist, you know, they might be able to help you out. But unless they're like a program director, be careful, you know, because what's expected in this kind of a document now is different from what has been expected previously. So you want objective people, okay? And I will again make the offer that if you want, anybody ever wants to send me your personal statement to look at, whether it's draft number 1 or draft number 5, I'm glad to do that. And don't hesitate to send me something if and you thinking, oh God, this really sucks. He's going to think I'm an idiot. Trust me, you cannot send me something that will be the worst thing I've ever seen. I mean, you can't. It's impossible. So don't worry about that. And I'm not going to think less of you because I know that this process involves a lot of revision. You do not, for example, want anything to be in there inconsistent with any other part of what's in your not only personal statement, but the rest of your application. You do not want any spelling, punctuation, verb tense, or other errors. You do not want to use the word I, my, you, those kind of things, first and second person things excessively. You do not want to do that. So it's because, again, remember, not only are they learning a lot about you in terms of your specialty preference and what you're looking for and what your attributes are, they're also learning a lot about how well you communicate in writing, you know, because PM&R docs and people in other specialties as well have to be able to communicate effectively in writing, not only generating medical records, but letters of referral, letters for various and sundry other things and other documents. And you got to be a decent writer. If you suck as a writer or think you do, then this process will take you a little longer than if that's not the case. Okay, next. So some additional suggestions. I would suggest don't elaborate or say a whole lot about a specific patient care experience you've had and your involvement with that. Remember, that doesn't focus on you. And often it describes people doing what they're kind of expected to do. So it's nothing special. I would also avoid mentioning family and friends unless it's very, very brief. It makes a very, very powerful statement that focuses on you as an applicant. And I'll tell you, about 80% of the people whose personal statements I've read who try to do that are not successful. Remember, this statement is not about you and your interest in medicine. The statement is, because you've already established that, this is about you and your choice of specialty and what aptitude you have for that specialty, what you're looking for in a program, and how you can benefit a program. So be really, really, really careful about that. Next one. So some people find it very, very helpful once they get a first or a second draft to read their just read their statement out loud. Sometimes that can help you point out issues, kind of things that I mentioned there. Remember, you want everything to have a positive image. Ideally, one page, certainly no more than a page and a half, and absolutely never, never, never more than two. Most program directors are not going to read past a page and a half. Or if they do, they're going to read it, but they're going to be thinking this person cannot be succinct. You know, you ask them what time it is and they tell you how to make a watch. And at the end of that, you still don't know what time it is. That is not what you want people thinking about you. And then the other things that I mentioned. So you want to try really hard to be 1 to 1.5 pages, as close to 1 page as you can. Okay, next. You can make the statement unique in terms of, you know, experiences that you've had that kind of helped shape you personally, particularly if that shaping also had an impact on your specialty choice. You want to let yourself show through, use your own words. I guarantee you that people will know if you used other people's words or if you've gotten a professional service to try to write a CV for, a personal statement for you. Again, this is personal. It's a time for you to write about yourself. So take that chance to do that. Don't use cliches. Don't spend time talking about specific patient care situations. And don't tell them you want to be a PM&R or any other kind of resident because you really want to help people. Hell, that's not even good for wanting, writing a statement to get into medical school, because it's kind of assumed that if you want to go to medical school, you've given some thought to the fact that, maybe helping people might be a good idea. So don't go there. Okay, next one. Okay, should you write more than one personal statement? You can, but I'll just tell you, it's a pain and it's a bother, and it's most people should not need to do that, but some people do. So here's why you want to do that. If you haven't yet decided about narrowing it down to one specialty, so if you're applying for more than one specialty, you absolutely want to have more than one personal statement, making sure that each one of those statements have all these elements I've been talking about, but you're going to need to kind of customize the statement to a specific specialty. Okay. If you want to personalize your statement to specific programs, so if, say, you're applying to 15 programs and maybe there's 5 of them that are really one type of program and 10 of them that are not, they don't quite fit that model, but they fit a little bit of a different model, but you'd be okay with any of those, then you're probably going to want to submit, 2 versions of your PM&R statement. And that's okay. It does take extra time and effort. And you want to make absolutely sure that you make sure that the right statement gets sent to the right program. I've seen situations where that did not happen. And let me just tell you, that is a disaster of epic proportions if it does. So just be very, very careful. You might want more than one personal statement if you're applying to, and this does apply to PM&R, if you're applying to a program that is one that is a 1+3 program. PM&R programs are divided into 2 types. One where you go to one place for the entire 4 years after medical school, and one that has you do what they call a foundational clinical year. Different people call it different things. Sometimes people call it a transitional year, preliminary year, internship, whatever. So if you're applying, and sometimes it's within the same institution, sometimes it's not even the same state. But if you're applying to more than one program, or excuse me, if you're applying to a 1+3 program, then you're going to need to apply to 2 different programs in your 4th year of medical school simultaneously. And you're going to be submitting 2 different complete ARIS applications with some of the same content, but you're absolutely going to need to have a second personal statement. And in that personal statement, if you're doing that, you want to indicate why you are selecting that program or the programs you're applying to in terms of how they will meet the requirements for PM&R in this case, and provide you a really good background for residency training. But all the other things actually that I've mentioned about personal statements still apply. Okay. Next one. As I said, you can upload as many versions of your personal statement as you want on the electronic residency application service, but you want to make absolutely sure that, you know, whichever version you send is going to go to where you want it to, and you want to double and triple check yourself. You really, really do. I cannot emphasize that enough, because if you don't, it's like saying something to somebody that the moment you say it, you wish you never had, and you have no idea how you're going to make up for it. You just don't go there. Okay. Next one. So there's no time that's too soon to start on a personal statement. I've told you that I think you should allow no less than 3 months, and preferably 5 or 6, to pull it off. I think you should plan on doing revisions after every draft. Okay. Don't do it all by yourself with no help or hope of help. Get people to help you. Okay. As I've mentioned before, people who are objective, who don't have any emotional stake in what happens, you know, like that's one thing that parents have, you know, if you have a parent reading it, you know, I know some parents who anything their offspring writes is wonderful, and others who you know, will tell you, well, I don't know, I don't want, you know, that program or those programs are like this many miles away, and do you really want to go there, and you know, do you really want to say this, and you don't want people influence you in ways that, however well meant it is, that you may not be comfortable with being influenced. So I'm not saying don't listen to family and close friends. I'm not saying that, but just be careful with having them review something like this that is so high stakes and that really needs to be objective and focused on you. Okay. Next. You want to, as I said, don't use a professional statement writing service. Okay. Those people, I don't care how good they say they are, I don't care how long they've been in business, they don't know you, they don't really care about you, they can't write in your voice. And I guarantee you program directors recognize this. Program directors literally go through training when they become program directors on how to recognize this. And if they recognize that you've done this, that tells them all kinds of things about you that are not positive at all. And I trust you, or you must trust me on this. If they detect that or even suspect that, you're done. It's over. You have no chance, because what that tells them in a very loud voice is that, you know, I'm not going to, you can't rely on me to do my own work or to be honest about, you know, what I write, what I tell you, and you know, I'm really not trustworthy, and I've relied on other sources when maybe I shouldn't have, and it's considered in the program director world the equivalent of academic cheating. So just please, please, please don't go there. You can get all the advice you want, but don't do that. Okay, so your overall goal is to have your personal statement that's absolutely authentic and it's unique to you. It's very personal. It reflects you, your personal, you know, your personality, your skills. It gives the person who's reading it insight into you, who you are, and how compatible you might be with their, not only their specialty, you know, but their residency program. And that you've chosen the specialty wisely. You've done your homework. You have a good, well-articulated reason, you know, for doing that. That's critically important. It really is. They're as interested in you on a personal level as they are in you on an academic level. They will spend as much time reading your personal statement as they will looking at your transcript or any reference letter that you provide them, or any licensing exam score or anything else. Remember, this is the only part of your application that you have absolute 100% control over. And because it's weighted as high as it is, You might, I just want you to exercise that control to your best advantage. Okay, next. So in summary, my suggestion to you is to start early. Don't do this at the last minute. Expect to revise it, get help from folks, make sure it's clear and concise, and make sure it addresses those 4 fundamental questions. Make it unique to you. It should not look like other people's personal statement, even in the same specialty, even applying to the same program. So start out with those 4 fundamental questions, begin brainstorming, make a little outline, and go away, do something else, come back to it later, maybe in a couple of days or maybe in a week later, and look at it and tweak that, adjust that however you need to, figure out how you're going to get the reader's attention up front. And again, if you want to have more than one version of your personal statement, that's okay, but just be careful if you do. Okay, don't tell people what rotation you did or what you liked or didn't like about rotations that you did in medical school. Don't repeat things that are on your CV. Don't do that. Don't use cliches. Don't use graphic examples, whatever. Don't refer to patients as your patients until you are in at least residency and beyond. They're not yours. They're someone else's. You want to approach them as if they're yours, but don't say they're yours because they're not. Don't use an example of the fact that you're a great person because you used a lot of extra time to sit down and talk with the patient and explain something to them that, the attending physician didn't have time to do. Well, if you're a medical student on rotations and you've got the time to do that, you're kind of expected to do that. And for God's sake, don't use anything that would identify a person, a place, an institution, or anything like that. Okay. Don't plagiarize on anything. Don't be negative about anything. Don't drop names of people unless you have a real meaningful connection with them. Okay, particularly if it's somebody from, from their program. Program directors are typically not going to be interested in what you did before you started medical school unless it's something incredibly relevant to your applying to residency. Okay, and and remember, a lot of people don't seem to remember that when you're applying for residency, you're basically applying for a job. Okay. And so you want to highlight that you're going to be a really good employee. You're reliable, you're punctual, you consistently meet and exceed expectations. You want to be able to, in answering those 4 questions, show examples of that. Okay. You don't have to have done superlative things like been, a bronze medal winner in the Olympics, or you don't have to have been to Bora Bora 3 times. You don't have to have started your own business. You don't have to have, X number of publications in professional journals or anything like that. It's enough to have been a really good medical student who's a well-rounded person with diverse interests, at least something other than medical school, who has thoughtfully made a choice of specialty in an informed way, and has also done that in terms of selecting their residency program. Now, there are a couple of caveats. If you've done your homework looking at a residency, program, and this is not unique to PM&R, say, because there are some, for example, residency programs whose mission it is to not only turn out good clinicians, but to turn out people who are going to be good clinical investigators and researchers and who are going to add to the body of knowledge in a specialty. And so those kinds of programs are going to place a higher priority on people who have research experience, maybe who have published or presented something, not necessarily in PM&R or the specialty, but that will take on, that might alter their expectations in terms of what's the ideal applicant to our program. So you want to keep that in mind. But typically, you don't have to have a lot of hardcore superlatives in order to be in order to be a competitive applicant. I'll give you an example. I had a conversation within the last 2 weeks with a medical student from another medical school who's very interested in PM&R, and said, this was a second-year medical student who said, I'm very interested in PM&R. They had done a lot of research about the specialty, and they had rotated with or shadowed several PM&R docs and blah, blah, whatever. And so they were saying, but I'm really not sure I'm a viable candidate. And they had great grades, and they had been doing really well on the self-assessment exams for the licensing exams, those kind of things. And so they said, I don't have a lot of research experience. I've never published anything. I've never presented anything. I've written some research papers in undergrad, but that's about it. And I know that in PM&R, you have to have significant research experience to be a viable candidate. And I said, who told you that? And they said, well, research is really beneficial for every specialty. And I said, that is true, but that's different than what you just said the sentence before. You said that if you don't have research experience, that you are not a viable candidate. And I said, that is not true. If you look at the National Residency Match Program profiles of successfully matching applicants, you will see that there are some people getting into residencies that don't have research experience or don't have much. I've heard the rumor, oh, well, unless you have at least 5 presentations and/or publications, you're not a viable candidate for PM&R. Well, that's just not right. And based on data that's less than a year old. Now, is that always a positive thing? Yes, because every program has a scholarly activity requirement, and some are more robust than others. And that's true for every specialty, by the way. So research is never negative, it's always positive, but it's not ever a deal breaker. Now, in the same breath, if someone is still got some time left in medical school and they don't have experience with something like that, they can still get it. It's not like, unless you're in the last 6 months of medical school, you can still get that. I'll give you an example. I published a paper with 2 other DCOM faculty members last fall, and there were 3 medical students on that paper. And so that got them some research experience, and I know all of those people are not interested in PM&R. I know that for a fact. And there were 3 of us physicians, and we're all in different specialties. So it's the experience and exposure to the research process that really is most appealing to program directors. Now, if you did a lot of research in undergrad or in grad school or something like that, or in a post-bac program, if you did any at all, be sure that gets on your CV. You don't necessarily have to state it in your personal statement, because they'll see it on your CV. Remember, your personal statement should not replicate your CV. Just be aware of that, and be wary of the rumor mill, the semi-reliable rumor mill. Now, if you're applying to PM&R residency or any other specialty at, say, Harvard, research is going to be a bigger deal, okay, than other programs. Absolutely. And in every specialty, there are those programs that are known to be very research intensive. And so for PM&R, some of those are not necessarily obvious. So if you would like for me at some point to give you some insight into the more research intensive programs, I'm certainly glad, to do that. But just be careful to not be a prisoner to rumors, and don't have superhuman expectations of yourself, because that's really just adds stress to an already stressful process that you just really don't need, and doesn't really benefit you in at all. Okay, next one. Don't give excuses for low course grades or licensing exam scores in your personal statement. Don't do that. Okay, Don't have errors in punctuation, spelling, grammar, sentence structure, stuff like that. And don't rely on spell check exclusively to find those, particularly in, excuse me, with words that are similar words, but not necessarily both of them are appropriate, okay? Don't go more than 2 pages. Don't ramble, don't go off on tangents, stay very, very focused. Don't tell the reader what's important about their specialty or about the practice of medicine. They already have figured that out. So don't do that. Now, in an interview, you might be asked, well, I noticed, you made a C in the neuro system. There's a lot of neuro in PM&R. So what happened there? Okay, you can answer that question. That's fine. I would not answer it saying, that neuro course director was a real jerk. I wouldn't do that. But, just tell the truth, whatever it is, and don't blame it on anybody else. You need to be accountable for what you do. But, in a personal statement, you don't want to talk about that because that's not relevant. That's not focusing on you. Okay. They will already have figured out that you made a C in neuroscience, and they don't care about that when they're reading the personal statement. Okay. Next one. Don't use sensationalist language. Now, this isn't PM&R specific, but it's just an example that I actually have read not so long ago in a personal statement. A person who was wanting to be an obstetrician who said, when I held up the baby, doused in nature's life milk, I knew then and there I was going into OBGYN. I wanted to throw up when I read that. And so would any OBGYN program director. Nature's life milk, really? Well, I knew that they had access to a Roget's thesaurus or some other thing. Oh my God, that's just ridiculous. Another one, and these are ones that I've read. I learned so much from the 70-year-old lady with abdominal pain after getting a diagnosis. She held my hand. We sat together while I comforted a former stranger, now my friend. Well, isn't that nice? Guess what? As a medical student, you're supposed to do that anyway. Okay. So that's not special, and it doesn't remember what the purpose of the personal statement is. It does not tell the program director or anybody else who's reading it the answer to any of those 4 fundamental questions about what you want in a personal statement. Internal medicine lends itself to being the most patient-centered specialty. Well, that's not only is that not true, but you can't back it up. So you got to be careful. That was an internal medicine applicant who wrote that. Just in the last 4 days, I wrote one that said something very similar about family medicine. Family medicine is the most broad-based, patient-focused primary care specialty. Well, it isn't, okay? It is very broad-based. It is a primary care-focused specialty, but there's no data to suggest that it's the most, okay? So don't say things that aren't true and that you can't absolutely back up. That may be an opinion that you hold, but that is not what people are looking for in a personal statement. Okay. Next. Here's another one. When you slow down, connect more deeply with patients and seek to understand beyond just what brings them to the inpatient floor, only then can you provide meaningful, lasting health care. Well, that's wonderful, but it doesn't focus on the person writing the statement. And as a program director, it doesn't tell me squat about what to expect from you, other than the fact that maybe you're a patient-centered person, and I would want my worst resident to be patient-centered. It doesn't tell me anything about your aptitude for my specialty or my program or anything like that. Medicine is a discipline that comprises both science and art, gives surgeons the unique ability to move the human race forward with energy and innovation. Oh, give me strength. That just makes me want to put a gun in my mouth and pull the trigger. They may feel that so strongly, and they're entitled to feel that way, but that is not what program directors are looking for. It's just not. So just be careful. I'm just trying to give you some real life examples of things that I've seen. And in this slide, there are 3 others. I'll let you just read those. If you have any doubts as to why these would be completely, utterly inappropriate in a personal statement, please ask me either now or ask me later. Here's another one, another set, and you know, just be careful. Just be careful. And notice in that first one on this slide, they're using the word "you" inappropriately as well. So. I wanted to be a surgeon since I played operation as a child. Just look at those, and hopefully my previous comments have helped you realize what is wrong with these particular statements. I selected these to be kind of illustrative examples of why you should not do, you know, certain things. I mean, these may be heartfelt, strongly felt things, but they're not the kind of things you want. There's a time and a place for everything. And this might be great for maybe a philosophical discussion or something like that among physicians, but it's not appropriate for a personal statement. So that's really the key there. So that's the end of that. Does anybody have any questions at this point? You can either ask, you know, by raising your hand or something like that, or you can put something in the chat. I'll be glad to answer them. If you think of any questions afterwards, just, you know, shoot me an email and I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. When I put this together for you guys, I thought to myself about what could I say? What should I say? What should I provide you that would be of the most help upfront generically as possible? And so that's what I've endeavored to do, and I hope I've been successful in doing that. So if I was, I'm very glad. If I was not, I really need to know that and in what way I did not succeed, so that I can not make that mistake again. Where can you find my email? Let me just tell you what it is. It's Michael, Michael, my last name, Weiting @lmunet.edu. And let me just put it in the chat. Nick, you said I'm a legend. I'm not sure that's true, but I appreciate the thought. I have been doing this a long time. So any other questions that anybody has? I hope I didn't take too long. I wanted to give you your everything that I felt like, at least for a first presentation, that it would benefit you. So
I have a quick question, Dr. Weiting.
Absolutely, shoot.
So you talked about how it's important to grab the reader's attention early on and make them interested. Could you provide any examples of good ways that you've seen that?
Are you talking about PM&R specific or not necessarily?
Yes.
Okay. Let me think, because I've read some recently. Yeah, I read one recently that said I had narrowed down my specialty choice to 2 different things, and my experience on the blah blah in this setting made me absolutely clear that PM&R was the right choice for me. And then in a couple of sentences, they described what that was.
Okay.
Another one actually found a quote from an extremely well-known PM&R physician and proceeded to tell me how, or me, the reader, how that specifically applied to them, and how that really fit with and was connected to those 4 key questions, you know. So and it didn't hurt that I knew that person, so that got my attention really quickly. And I've heard that person say those very words. So, and I was impressed that they found the quote in the first place. So that really told me, you know, an awful lot about that person. So. I had a person one time who was applying to the University of Minnesota where I did my residency, and I said, and they asked me, in my personal statement, should I mention that I know you? And I said, no, you should not. I said, they had already asked me for a reference letter, and I said, so they'll figure out that I know you. I said, but I had another person ask me, well, do they remember you? And I could say, yeah, they absolutely remember me. I'm fairly memorable, or so I'm told, by people there. And so, because I do, even though some people are not there that were when I was there, I do still have a connection with them. I still do teaching for them. In fact, I'm going to be there in May, doing some grand rounds and some other stuff in their residency didactics. So I'm still connected with them pretty tightly. So yeah, they know who I am, but you should not. I told them, I said, don't focus on the fact that you know who I am. I said, because that's not focusing on you. That's focusing on something else other than you. So you don't want to do that. You know, if I write you a letter, they will absolutely know. And if you're from LMU DCOM, they'll know that it's impossible for you to not have at least some awareness of who I am, you know. So just because of the way we're organized here. So anyway, so and that would be the same thing I would say with dropping, you know, anybody's name. You know, if you happen to do a rotation with a world-renowned physiatrist, whoever they may be, I wouldn't. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't put that in my personal statement. You know, if you had a great experience there and they helped you figure out that that's what you wanted to do, then ask them for a letter. You know, and then the people who read your personal statement will have also, either they will have or they will be reading your letter written by that person, whoever they may be.
Got it. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Y'all holler at me anytime. I'm sorry if I took a little too long, but I wanted to make sure that you had all the information that at least you needed to get things rolling. And again, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm good about answering email pretty quickly. And the only time that I probably won't be able to do that is between about the 22nd or 23rd of this month until about the 5th of March, because I'll be in Switzerland at the International Olympic Committee doing stuff there, and they're going to keep me incredibly busy. And I won't be answering very many emails during that time. And it'll, you know, I'll be 8-9 time zones away, and I probably won't be looking at them all that frequently. And if I do respond to them, they'll be coming back at bizarre times for y'all's schedule. So I will get them, I will respond to them, but that'll be a time of slower than usual response because I'll be out of the country. So
I think that's more than fair.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Hope you have a good rest of the afternoon. If you have an interest in the Super Bowl, I hope you get to watch it, or at least I know some people have any, you know, if there's any second years on, I know you have an exam tomorrow, so you may not be focusing on the Super Bowl, but anyway, I hope it goes the way you want it to go. All right, y'all take care. Thank you so much.